All right. So yeah, that's where they are. Drew, did you want to answer for that other one in Marcel's one in terms of the differences? Uh,
Yeah, I can answer it. Do you wanna pop up that slide while you're
yeah.
sharing the screen, and then I'll do it. Is Marcel on the call?
I'm not sure.
Anyway, it doesn't really matter if he is or isn't, but of course we can get the answer to him. So the slide that Howard is sharing is from Veronica's course, and it is basically what is the difference between a business glossary, a data catalog, and a data dictionary. And what I would do is start on the right-hand side with the data dictionary, and that is very much the physical details of databases. If you when you order a new application, whether it be SAP, Oracle, or Microsoft Dynamics, or any one of those things, you're going to get a data dictionary that comes with it that will tell you the names of the tables, the attributes. It will describe those attributes, field lengths and rules, everything you need to know about that database, the database structure. According to these notes, it often comes directly from the logical model, but my understanding, and I guess how it would help me, is that you could build the logical model from the dictionary, but the dictionary is at a much lower level of data.
Yeah, you'd have to go logic. You'd have to go reverse engineer from the database schema to the physical data model, and then up to the logical. So you've
Logical,
got a bit
yeah.
of a jump past there.
And yeah, to me, I would always equate that physical schema with what you see in the data dictionary, but maybe with
Yeah,
some enhancements.
yeah,
Um, then the very useful one, the catalog, is where typically where I've seen it used very well is any kind of data lake environment, where there's analysis and storage of both structured, unstructured data flowing in from multiple sources. And what it is it's that list of any data asset and any data attribute that is landing up in that environment that you might want to use to do analysis, to do queries, to build data products, to know where the data came from, to know how fresh it is, to know what the quality is, to know who the owner is, all of the details around that data. You should be able to go to the catalog, much like you would go to a library and look up the card to find out exactly that book you need and everything you need to know about it. And then for me, the business glossary, and this is something that I hopped on a few times in the other sessions, is it's that place where you go to find out the business speak. Every single industry that I've worked in has got business speak. They've got acronyms. And even between companies in the same industry, as you move between them, the same acronym can mean slightly different things. And in that business glossary is where you would go to see what the term means. If I know in insurance, they talked about I've gone blank now. Propensity, the propensity of a policyholder to churn. But the rules that they used on the short-term side and the rules that they used on life insurance are different when they come to propensity. So in your glossary, you would very definitely define propensity in short-term insurance for motor products means this. Propensity in short-term insurance for household goods means this. You would have all of that. And if propensity is made up of a combination of things, so client and certain policy level, number of premiums, whatever else, you would be able to look up from the glossary into the catalog to see where those terms came from, how they get used. Because very often the same thing is what goes by 2 or 3 or 4 different names. It would also tell you the metrics that are being used. So something like customer lifetime value. What is the metric that has actually been applied in there? It will tell you business rules. For instance, You cannot be called a customer until you've made your first payment. It would tell you who the steward is. It's that, for me, it's that go-to place to understand the business speak and link from the business speak to the catalog, where you can find where that data is housed and where it came from and everything else. And then the catalog, especially in large organizations, the catalog, for instance, if you're looking at a customer record, would refer you to maybe 5 or 6 different physical databases that have got customer data in them, and those would be described in the different data dictionaries. So from a data catalog, you could have a one-to-many relationship with database schemas and other file systems relation or applications that where a customer entity might be managed. How do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I wanted to just show you, this is an example of what we're building is a unified meta model. And this is an Excel spreadsheet of just examples. So what I'm trying to do, and we had a presentation on that where we're trying to build examples of deliverables that it's not connected to a product. So this is what we're talking about here. Is the this is the data dictionary. There's the example of a data dictionary, and maybe just to scan out, it's got the catalog ID, the connection to the catalog, the server, the database, the schema, the table, the column name, data types, and then a link to the business glossary. So that's at the data dictionary level. That's the fully qualified name. And then from there, we can go to the data catalog, and these are all the attributes at a data catalog level. And again,
Interrupting you quickly, do you only have attributes? Do you have entities as well in your catalog?
I just have data assets. So
okay,
basically,
that's cool.
we
No, I
start
like
off
it.
and then we drill down from asset to dictionary. And so
Right.
there's that virtual link over here where I can show you all of the catalogs that this dictionary is connected to. So
right.
or that field is connected to.
Yep.
So there's my drop down of data catalog. These are the different catalogs that you choose. And then what we do is then connect that to our business glossary that's sitting over here. Is the business glossary, and that's what you'll talk about now, is the term, the abbreviation, the type, the subject area, its classification, the information type for data privacy, then the definition of that in terms of those 6 wives and a husband, and then things like the status of the term and who owns it and who stewards it and things like that. So
yeah,
those are just examples of those artifacts or deliverables that need to be created. Just a simple example and not void of any product or tool.
I like it.
All right.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a pity Marcel's not here, because otherwise I think you would
Yeah.
understand. But as again, just the final point is I've harped on a few times. I think that with a well-constructed business glossary and a portal that allows access to it, you could be replacing a huge amount of the documentation that gets churned out for induction of new staff members, for training purposes, for the glossary of terms that is repeated endlessly in documents, that is hidden away in errors. It would be that go-to place where you can find out, as you say, all the information around the major business entities and terms and what they mean, and it just takes away guesswork. It takes away hassle factor. It just takes away repetitive work. But yeah,
Great, Drew.
deaf audience.
Yeah. Veronica thinks it's great.
Oh, well, somebody likes me, yeah. But then again, we go back a long way, Howard. Right. So I suppose I should consider sharing.
Yep.
Just confirm that you're seeing the
Yes, I
correct
can see it.
screen.
It's the presentation view, yes.
Yay, every time it works, I feel happy. All right, so over the past 4 weeks, we went through the data manager. That would be kind of the guy that heads up, in this instance, I think the metadata management team, but could be somebody else. We talked about the citizens. Those are the people, the stewards that use it, do everything with it. We talked about the professionals, and today we're going to talk about data executives. But as I said, I've taken a slightly different view on it, but it's what I'm seeing from a practical experience. But again, we can swap and change and do as we need to do. If you remember, I spoke about Hercules, but he's now Atlas, which is quite correct. We spoke about the data steward being able to juggle all of these different balls. And then we spoke last week about metadata being like a Rubik's Cube, where there's so many moving parts, but when they come together, there's absolute magic. It's sheer mastery. Then just very quickly, again, with those people that were not with us at previous times, the origins of metadata goes back to the libraries of ancient Alexandria from the 3rd century of BC, where a chap called Callimachus invented something called a pinnacus, which is a Greek word for tablets or boards. And it's a place where he cataloged every single scroll in that library, including the subjects and the literature to the science. There was a whole subject-based thing. The scrolls into categories, easier to find stuff, index of authors. Every one had a description of the scrolls. And what is amazing is these libraries and the Pinnacus lasted through to about the 3rd or 4th century AD before those libraries were destroyed, unfortunately. So yeah, metadata is not new. It's been around the block many, many, many times. And I think that when we are getting overwhelmed, we just need to think back to how do we find a book in a library and then broaden it, branch it out from there. We also spoke on more than one occasion about metadata being about data, and it's so that you can find and understand and use and manage data. We've also gone through, well, as you said, the who, the what, the where, the why, the when, and the how. We've answered some of these as to who plays the roles, where do these things come in. And then today, as we're looking at the business case, I'm just going to touch on kind of the drivers for this and maybe whether there's any specific security or anything else that comes into play. We normally touch on any questions that have come up from previous sessions, and for those that don't know, Howard and I have had a bit of a debate about the two words data lineage and data provenance. I did a bit of research because both terms are used in metadata management and in data management. And provenance is from the French word provenir, which means to come forth or to originate, and first used in the 17th century. And Howard, you were quite right. It refers to origin or source of something, especially an object of art or antiquity, and it provides a detailed history of that object, including its ownership and exhibition and sales records. And as we've mentioned, it is being used more recently in things like data and in very high-end wine. Lineage, on the other hand, is the process of tracking the journey of data from its source to its destination, with any transformations, with any modifications. So it's like a family tree. So where provenance is the record of origin and history of the piece of data, when it was created, modified, used, it tracks the journey from source to its final destination. So lineage tells us how did this data get here, and provenance tells us where did this data come from. Hopefully that does clarify things just a little touch. So then on the topic of metadata and show me the money, because somebody's got to pay for this thing. So what we're going to look at today is the business case. We'll touch on return on investment. We'll look very strongly at support and ownership, as well as a little bit of the governance side of things. And then is there an alignment with the business and the data strategy? To kick it off, I have to say that I've not found too many instances in my experience where people justify metadata on its own.
Yeah.
In every instance, it is on the back of or in support of another data management or data governance initiative. So whether it's implementing a data modeling tool and you get a metadata tool with it, whether it's driving out governance and you need to have ownership and stewardship. Oh, by the way, maybe metadata is quite a good idea if you're doing a big data quality initiative. But in almost every instance, it is on the back of something or it's bundled with something. And I have got those notes you shared with me, Howard, about the data catalog
Catalog.
too at the end of it, which we can touch on if necessary. But the catalog, which is metadata, is becoming more and more and more important between the catalog and the glossary. It's one of those things you didn't know you needed them, and then when you haven't got them, you know how much you actually are missing them. But yeah, so more generically, business
But Drew,
cases. Yes, yes,
just to support you there, it's the same situation, and certainly we know in Saudi that it's the data catalog that's driving the metadata development. That requirement to have basically an understanding of all of the assets, and then when it operates at a government level, then it's all of the different owners of data in the government.
yeah.
So that tends to be the thing that's pulling metadata along, and it's not metadata in totality. So you probably find that people get too scared if they talk about that whole or just try to talk at the metadata level.
Yeah, I way prefer just to talk about a data catalog and a glossary. And people
Yeah.
understand that term. You don't have to get into the deep details. You can hide those away.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the generic business cases that we would have seen for metadata would be the improved data quality and consistency. Obviously, we know why we want to have good metadata because it helps with the integration. The standards helps ensure that we can find the stuff and the accuracy. We know that increasingly in the world where there's just so much data, it's impossible to find stuff. So with good metadata, it's easier to find the data, so it reduces the search time. The catalog and stuff helps you with the understanding of what the data is and its purpose, and it allows business users to find and to use that data independently. I have to say I'm still not 100% convinced that even with really solid data catalog and business glossary and whatever, that every person in the organization is going to go and look for and use data. I still suspect that there's a certain class of citizen that will use data and others that won't. But that's a discussion for another day. The another
Sorry, Drew, what
yes,
the so I mean I like what you put there, and that's certainly when I did the master data course right in the beginning, you got to go through data discovery and data quality. Now let's take a big bank and you want to do a domain for customer. Now, finding all the customer attributes and anything that refers to customer in a bank, that must be mayhem if you don't have this sort of catalog that's got this thing together. Of course, with the dictionary and all of those elements, so you can bring it, you can bring all the stuff together, and then that almost the trust level. So that other thing that Informatica and Calibra are doing is here are my data assets, and here's the corresponding quality score of that data
yeah,
asset. So I think these two things will seriously improve and benefit other knowledge areas like your reference and master data.
yeah. We also discussed last week approach to doing metadata, and it's very definitely advisable, even if you're starting with a domain like customer, to probably find the primary customer domain and build your glossary, build your catalog, your dictionaries, with everything else, and then find the ancillary, call it subdomains, also for customer, and use and append it and add to it and enhance it as you go along. To try and do a big bang is also never going to work. And so the banks are one organization where, okay, you got all your verticals, you got current accounts, savings accounts, credit, car loans, insurance, whatever, but consistently it's the same person. Other organizations, I think increasingly in retail, where yes, they would have retail customers, they could have patients for their pharmacy side, they could have account holders for their financial services, they could have all sorts of customers, but it is that same person going by different names, customer, patient, account, whatever, in the different domains, but it's all harks back to the same consistent information that needs to be managed and organized and with the correct terminology and quality and everything else. I think that also drives how it probably something you touched on in your master and reference data course is what do you do about customer? Can you actually create a single view of the customer physically, or is it always going to be a virtual thing
Yeah.
where you expose the different ones because you cannot actually create the golden record, probably because of compliance requirements or privacy requirements or the POPI requirements. You didn't ask if you
Yeah.
could do it.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, another strong business case for metadata is reduced costs, and it goes around, I think, the duplication effort, and I'll touch on it a bit later. Search time, and also hopefully reduce the risk of a data breach because you know what is sensitive. Obviously, the decision making, if you've got accurate, reliable data in the right place, you can do better answers. Your metadata can support your advanced analytics and definitely help with forecasting and with reporting. But those are all the generic ones. Everybody wraps them out, no matter which tool vendor you go to. They'll tell you, we can do all of this. Yeah, da 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 da. The other important one, and I think that's also where we had a brief chat the other day, where regulatory compliance. So something like BCBS 239, while it doesn't specifically state, I actually went and looked, you've got to have data lineage in place. It definitely recommends that it is in place. If you look at something like the PPR 13, you've got to put lineage in place.
Yeah.
And it can help you understanding the GDPR or POPI or whatever else. So it can support all of those. So these are generic business cases which very often get touted, but you can go to the board, you can go to the executives and say, I need metadata because I want to ensure we are compliant, or
Yeah.
I want to reduce costs, or I want to improve decision making, or I want to improve the quality. And they're going to say to you, yeah, come back tomorrow. So the question is then, who is the best person to build and to present the business case for metadata, being that there is no program or that the program is in place, but it is floundering? I've taken a gamble and I've bundled some person here called the head of data analytics, but it could be a number of different titles. It could be a number of people, but I'm seeing this person, this team, as that team that is get nailed because the data lake costs are so high. They are paying millions and millions and millions of rands every month for AWS storage or for Azure storage. And nobody really knows what is happening, why or how, whatever else. I've heard some eye-watering numbers that people are paying for this stuff. There's also the question about they're getting nailed because people are saying, I can't find the data. I know that it's there somewhere, but I can't find it. And where is it? Oh, let me have it. On and on. If they can find it, the question comes about, are they actually allowed to use that data? Is it maybe sensitive? This poor person doesn't actually know, but they've been asked, or their team are being asked. So they've been asked, reduce the costs, help us find the data, tell us if we can use it. Then the whole question about where did this data come from? I was looking for sales data, but I want sales data that has been aggregated back to the department level. I don't want sales data at product level. Where did that data come from? Then finally, and probably the most consistent one that we get, is this data is wrong. There's a quality issue. I'm certain that there are other ones that these guys, and it could be that this is one person, it could be that there are a couple of people, it could be different departments, it could be that this is the chief data and analytics officer, it could be any one of a number of titles, but somebody is being asked these questions. Why are the costs so high? Where can I find the data? Where did it come from? Why is it wrong? How are you going to fix it? I mean, the other ones would be, where's it going to? Whatever. So these are all real world questions. And knowing what we know, there is a solution. If we go with metadata, a good metadata program, a good metadata practice, the data lake costs are almost certainly that high because there's data that is redundant, obsolete, and I can't even remember what the T is, but basically
Trivial.
we've got trivial, thank you. We've got a lot of data sitting in that lake that was maybe loaded once because somebody needed it, but it could be a large data set. And then they weren't quite happy with it, so they asked for a different one. So now you've got 2 copies or 3 copies or 4 copies or 5. It's all building up here. And the old story that storage is cheap, I think is falling by the wayside, especially when we are paying for that kind of stuff in dollars. So there's definitely the ability to understand the redundancy, which is the duplication, the stuff that is obsolete, hasn't been used, needs to be used. And I think this goes beyond data retention and data archiving stuff, although that would play into it. The question about, I can't find the data. If there was a metadata program in place and the catalog was properly built, this poor person would be able to point anybody asking the question to the catalog. There's your data. That's what it looks like. That's what you need to know about it. And through the lineage, they would also know, where did this data come from? And they would also know, are they allowed to use that data? And then once they look at the data, they would see what the quality is supposed to be. And if it's wrong, they would know who to speak to either get this person or whoever the owner steward is to start fixing that data. So from a scenario where this poor guy is getting bombed on left, right, and center, day in, day out, and I've been in organizations where I've watched this person absolutely dread coming to work because of the stuff they're going to get. And there are solutions available. But very interesting then is, show me the money. Where does she come up with the money from? She's got to go and get support and to get people with backing. And that's where the whole sponsorship comes back from the primary stakeholders for metadata. So if we think about it, and I've only really touched on 2 or 3 examples, but if we think about the massive monthly costs for cloud storage and backup, the 2 guys, yes, he's the guy who's taking the flak, but the 2 people in the organization that it really matters to, because it's their back pockets, it's their profit and loss, it's their bottom line, is the chief financial officer and the chief information officer. So to build up a case for metadata to be able to reduce this, these 2 people have to get involved, which is going to take a little bit of discussion, coercion, planning, but bottom line, for the head of data and analytics, if that's the title you're using, to be proposing a metadata solution to reduce the costs, where it's actually the responsibility of these 2 people. He needs to buy that. He needs to get that buy-in from them. And we take that one and we say, right, more sponsors, support and sponsorship. So I can't find the data. The stakeholders there are numerous. It could be the actuaries, the head of the actuaries and the actuaries in an insurance business that need data to be able to do their models. It could be the data analysts that are looking to provide data assets or answers to people. It could be the data scientists that are building models. It could be the team that is promoting data monetization, maybe selling aggregated data assets, for instance, back to suppliers, or maybe selling scores back to the banks. It could be the people that are responsible for customer that need to be able to be doing stuff, to be creating promotions, to be understanding trends, to be understanding terms. It could be the people that are responsible for product. It could well be risk and compliance, and it could be any other umpteen numbers of stakeholders that can't find the data. And when it comes to costs of that, the opportunity costs are hard to calculate, but I suspect that if you look at, for instance, sales growth or profitability, and it's 2%, whatever else, and if that data was available, maybe it could be 2.1%. And big organizations, that could be millions and millions of rands. The other area that you could use to drive out this business case is the people costs. We've all heard the stories about data engineers, data scientists spending 80% of their time trying to find the data and trying to manipulate it. Now, back when I was young, there was a costing methodology called activity-based costing. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it or remember it. And
Yeah,
it's
it's still
not,
working.
yeah,
They're
and
still using it.
it's not attendance-based compensation, which happens in some organizations. But if you were to take and model the cost of a data scientist and look at the cost of their salary, their overheads, everything else, and look at the amount of time it takes them to find data over and over and over and over, you would come up with a RAND value. If you take that and you extrapolate it over the data analysts, over the actuaries, or what is the opportunity costs for the actuaries if they can't do this stuff? What is the activity-based costing for actuaries trying to find data? And these are highly paid, very, very scarce resources. So I suspect that the business case for being able to build a data catalog and a metadata tool, if this person structured his approach, her approach correctly and approached these different stakeholders, he would get massive buy-in. He really would. And so suddenly, instead of it being, what do you want money for? It becomes almost a no-brainer, and it gets fed into the budget as soon as possible, if not sooner. When you get to the other stuff, am I allowed to use the data? The data is wrong. Where did it come from? Again, the same person has suddenly got a whole bunch of primary stakeholders and sponsors for it. The risk and compliance people, again, the actuaries, the analysts, and here it is more about incorrect reports, reputation risk, unhappy data customers. But there's a strong business case for making sure that people can find the data, they know that they're allowed to use it, they know where it came from, and they know how to get it fixed and corrected. Okay, maybe this is a little bit more of a data quality issue, but it still falls into the same place. So I'm suggesting that if this head of data and analytics, whoever he or she is, were to slowly build up their business case to say, how do we reduce our costs? Because you can demonstrate probably doing some profiling of duplication in your lake and say, we know that already there's a 30% duplication and obsolete data. You could do that fairly easy. Our cost for cloud storage is 100 million Rand. If we reduce that by 30%, it drops to 70 million Rand. There's a real bottom line cash saving for both of these guys, and that would more than pay for any metadata program that needs to be started or restarted. Typically, if you look at this activity-based cost of those people every single day across the organization, over and over and over and over, the amount of money that could be saved and the amount of productivity that could be generated, I think is also mind-blowing. And then finally, obviously, a sponsorship for these guys as well. So if you've gone and done all of that good stuff, if you manage to persuade the powers that be to fund a metadata program, whether it be in isolation, whether it be on the back of something else, obviously you go through the whole tool selection, all of that good stuff because of having built your metadata strategy, having clearly understood your requirements, gone and done your RFPs, your RFIs, all of that. That's when it gets interesting as well, because yes, all of these people might have been battling to find the data, to use the data, whatever else. But we all know change is hard. There's often resistance. So we can do a maturity assessment, but what may well need to happen is to actually do an organization readiness assessment and to do a whole plan around organization readiness, and with maybe your people team, maybe you got a specialist change team, but start promoting it. You would have to have your consistent business focus all the way through. It cannot be that, okay, now we bought a metadata product and business people put their hands up and say it's not our problem. The metadata analysts, all of the business terms and populating the glossary. We've consistently said that this is a joint effort between business analysts and the metadata analyst. As I said, this essential metadata needs a coordination and commitment. No matter where you're looking for it, it cannot happen on its own. It cannot happen in isolation, and it cannot happen just with the IT team alone or the metadata team. Again, if you get your business support and you can align the project to a business need, you can well justify, start to measure that return on investment. You probably need an enterprise governance strategy, which needs senior management commitment and engagement. And the IT and the business staff need to work a cross-functional way. I mentioned it up here. And you do need to identify as part of your organizational change and culture change abilities, even people in a full-time basis, but at least they understand what the change means through having a data management or metadata management program in place. With it comes the need for governance. And again, you need to determine your requirements for the metadata cycle and where to establish those governance processes for those requirements. I think in most companies, data quality will already be, there will be data quality initiatives that could be running under the auspices of data governance. Master data and reference data could be running in place, security could be running in place, architecture, but you need to do that same governance, incorporate that governance for metadata, because it'll go around your metadata process controls, your metadata standards and guidelines, and your metadata metrics. So we look at some of the process controls. We're saying, okay, so what are the things that we need to actually put in place if we're going to have governance for metadata based on the business cases that we've looked at? So somebody's going to have to actually define the standards and manage the status or change for metadata, probably the metadata team and in collaboration with the business guys. You're definitely going to have to do the promotional activities, training development, and training. So the training development is building the material, and it's delivering the training. Then definitely the management of those business terms and the definitions as they go through the status changes or the gates. And I think that talks to the metadata lifecycle. So a term is proposed, somebody would look to do some work around it. It probably goes into test, it goes through a series of evaluations, and it would finally get signed off either by the data steward, the business owner, whatever else to say, sharp, it's ready, it goes live, and then any changes to that need to go through a formal change control process, just like any other changes to any other database or program. And the responsibility there also is to ensure that those terms are associated with the related terms. We looked earlier at the business term and the glossary, and then the catalog, and then through to the dictionaries, and it would include things like your categorization. Is this data financial data, and hence these are the requirements around retention. Is it people data, and hence here the requirements around privacy. So all of that would be the governance responsibility to ensure that that stuff is done. And standards are absolutely essential. We've spoken at times, I would put up earlier the thing about the unified Metamodel. So the standards need to be in place, especially if you're changing data with trading partners, because something like the ISO 11179 gives you a framework for how you should do your metadata if you're going to be sharing data through APIs, through other interfaces. And there are specific sector-based standards that you can apply to. The final side of it is to measure the impact of that metadata. You need to have an idea of the impact if you don't have that metadata. So how much time are those consumers spending searching for their data? When we looked at it as one of the strong drivers for a business case. How effective is it in terms of completeness? Does it tell people everything they need to know? And are people using it? If they're not using it, why aren't they using it? How can we help them use it through training, through promotion, through marketing, through everything else? And then, in summary, I'm saying that the combination of a well-researched and justified business case for a metadata program, aligned with a comprehensive set of metadata requirements in support of those business cases, and the metadata strategy should be aligned and should support your business strategy and your data strategy. So in summary, I think we've covered most of the stuff, but at a macro level, we looked at the standards, we looked at the metrics, we looked at the controls, we looked at the governance, we looked at the organization change, but more specifically, we looked at how do you build your business case? Where does it build from?
So did I, Drew? I think it was Di.
Sorry, say it again, Howard?
I thought you were pausing, made a noise, but it's okay.
No. All right. So, I mean, that is pretty much what I was going to address today. As I said, we can share the data catalog too, and this could well be a very, very good opportunity to re-pitch the business case for metadata. As in, your traditional catalog does these kind of things, whereas the data catalog too brings so many enhancements. So Howard, I don't know if you want to talk through this lot, if we should raise it or if we should pause this and ask if there's any questions.
I think we'll pause and ask for questions. Drew, I did want to ask or share with you an example of a real life project that we.
Can I stop sharing?
You can. It was a real live project of for a regulator where the different departments did not know the data that they were requesting from the reporting entities. And the reporting entities got together and complained to the director of this regulator to say, the regulatory burden that you're putting us under by continually asking us for data that we're providing to multiple business units is excessive. And when we did this data catalog, manual data catalog process, the most important insight that we got was a number of business people saying, I never knew we had this data. I never knew that it was around and available to us. So it was quite a sort of powerful visualization, and we built Power BI visualizations of where all the data was from Excel, and these people were blown away by how much data they had and how often they were battling to get the information they require. So That was it was a 6-month project where they hired something like 10 people to go and collect all of this data across their business units. And it was considered to be a very successful project.
Yeah, I think that what you're highlighting there as well is that if you do build your catalog, one of the important things to include in there are all of your downstream stakeholders.
Yeah.
And when you start collating that, it can actually highlight the reach and the impact of that data, a data attribute, the data asset in the lake suddenly is being used to create tokens that get sold to suppliers. It gets used for scoring. It gets used for risk. It gets used for new products. And it suddenly, what was something fairly simple in a ERP system, as that question, that term that data is the new gold. For me, it's data is the new sun. It is that asset that is reusable, and as you use it, it normally increases in value rather than diminishes in value. So it's about knowing where that data is going to and who's using it. And as you mentioned in that organization, once people realize it's there, they find new ways to use it. They find new things to do with it. And again, I mean, you know that I'm a salesman. I love to tell people, did you know you could have this? Did you know you could do that? Because again, I also think for far too long, IT was seen as the custodians of the data, and people had to jump through the proverbial circus hoop to get an extract of their own data to look at it. It's, I mean, I've seen examples where somebody wanted to run a data quality profiling exercise and were told they can't have access to the data because they needed to ask the data owner. Asked who the data owner was. No, we don't actually know that, but you got to ask them.
Right.
There's so much politics and crap hidden away.
Right. Thanks, Drew. So let's just open up to anybody. Any questions? Just also to share with you, I shared an example in the chat of a RACI for the metadata function that you were talking through, Drew. It's pretty massive. That's a work that we did to bring all of this stuff together.
I see it there. Yeah, but yeah, Howard, I think the point I'm making or trying to make is that we all know that metadata is you can't live without it. You can't work without it. But far too often, some trying to justify the purchase of some tools, and they have to jump through all of those hoops. Whereas with a little bit of thought, a little bit of effort, a little bit of collaboration, they can get serious buy-in from those people that would benefit most from it. But it does take change. It does take a lot of change, a lot of communication, a lot of marketing.
Great. Okay. Any other question? Anybody else?
No, I think.
Drew, I know that John O'Gorman said thanks very much.
Yeah, I saw that there.
And when we were asking Keith, Keith was going to give us a verdict at how well you had done. So, Keith, I'd love to get your any questions from you, sir.
Keith and Thomas.
And Thomas, yeah.
And Veronica.
Hey, Veronica's got her hand up.
All right, V, you go first.
Yes, it's just something, and it's probably not got anything to do with the executives, but in the exam questions for the data management fundamentals, it just seems to be that it's unclear what a metadata, what a data lineage tool actually gives you. There's something that people can get. I mean, I know the path of the data where as it travels, where it comes from and where it goes, but does it actually give you the values as well?
With some of the software tools that I've seen, yes, it does.
Yeah.
You have the ability to, and it's actually a very useful function as well, that if you are, for instance, busy cataloging data in the catalog, and there's a attribute that you are uncertain of, if you can see the values that are in that attribute, you can actually go to business people and say, this is what the data looks like, tell us what it means. And it suddenly closes that loop. I think what it also does, a good Lineage tool, it's able to take from the source across the different hops, and any transformation changes, it should highlight as well.
Yeah. And
Awesome. Thanks, Drew.
and Veronica, just to add there is when you do BCBS and they call for a time thing, almost to collect the risk at this point in time under stress. The CFO has to actually acknowledge that there's been no illegal transformation, and that data has to be submitted to the central bank. That are those actual transformations. So the detail is very deep in that, and it can have access issues as well. If you think of moving HR data and salary data, you've got to be very careful of what people can see in that movement of data. But it's extremely detailed down to the whichever level you need to get to, that is visible.
I know Di's got a hand up, but I'll
Yeah.
quick comment there. I believe the reason that I was told that the BCBS 239 regulations actually came into play is because when the original Basel Accord was published, people were smudging the data to ensure better capital adequacy or better solvency and all the rest. And then the BCBS 239 with the Lineage put a stop, or hopefully put a stop to that, or maybe not quite.
Yeah. They actually, Drew, they made the comment of we have to move from PowerPoint metadata to actual metadata. So the people were building their flows in PowerPoint in Basel II and stuff like that, and submitting them, and they said no more. This has to, now we want the actual flow and the actual lineage and the actual transformation. And then the CFO had to sign that there was no funny business in that movement. But Di, your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Drew and Howard. Apologies for being late. I got caught out with our change. Yeah, I'm just freaked out that I missed this session. Just to follow on from Veronica's question, I remember about 24 years ago attending the Metadata Business Rules and a Data Quality Conference in London.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to, it was my first sight of a tool. Can I mention the name? It was Abinishio. Yeah. And this was,
as long as you don't sell it, Di.
No, I don't sell it. I don't sell any tools. And I was given a demonstration by British Telecom, BT. And you know, the Ab initio guys were secret squirrels. They you had to be in with the crowd to be able to.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe you hovered over a step in the flow and you could see the value, but not only that, you could see what changed it and how it was changed, the process. And yeah, I think for me, that's very important for Lineage. It's not just, it's the what and the where it's gone, and how it's been changed along the journey. And I think that's what was very important for BCBS 239, that complete traceability of the data.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thanks,
well done on a good series. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, Di, are you on daylight saving time that you missed us? Your
No,
clocks went,
I'm now back to winter.
clocks went back an
so-
hour or something, I believe.
Yeah, we've gone back an hour, and I did have it correctly in my diary, but in my head it was still set for 3 o'clock.
Yeah.